Nazi Germany invented some of the most destructive weapons on Earth. Giant guns, high-tech rockets, advanced jet fighters. One of Adolf Hitler's most top-secret bombs was the Fritz X, grandfather of the modern smart bomb, still shrouded by one of the last great mysteries of World War II. Could the Nazi bomb have changed the outcome of the war? Now, a German-American team of aviation experts resurrects the Third Reich's technologically advanced weapon. The crew undertakes a daring experiment far out in the Californian desert, dropping 2 replicas of the Nazi precision bomb.
Watch the Fritz X, because we are definitely in a danger zone here.
To unlock the mystery of Hitler's secret weapon.
Release. Gone. I felt it go.
The Harz Mountains in Germany, a location infamous to US soldiers as a place of brutal battles in 1945. Here in a small castle lives an experienced model maker of World War II weaponry. None of his neighbors know about the secret projects he is working on. Nazi aircraft and weaponry as full-scale models. The mastermind behind these replica prototypes is Holger Bull, the son of a World War II German Air Force pilot. He reconstructed these replica suicide aircraft from blueprints drawn by Nazi engineers, hidden in archives for decades. One top-secret Nazi weapon puzzles Bull the most: the Fritz X, an early precision bomb that entered combat in 1943. Prototype testing revealed that the success rate with this radio-guided bomb was over 80 times higher than with conventional free-falling bombs of the time. Its first missions brought death and destruction in the Mediterranean. When the alliance with Italy broke up, Adolf Hitler ordered the bombing of the Italian fleet, including one of their biggest battleships, the Roma. It was September the 9th, 1943, as the Fritz X came down on the pride of the Italian Navy. The battleship sank after 2 direct hits within 35 minutes, leaving over 1,200 sailors dead. 2 days later, the Germans targeted the cruiser USS Savannah that was supporting US landings in southern Italy. Again, the Fritz X hit its target, but this time, something went wrong.
The Fritz X actually came down and penetrated the roof of the number 3 gun turret and actually glanced off the breech of the center gun of that turret and continued down through the handling spaces and actually exploded in the magazine as it exited the bottom of the warship, which was actually a very lucky thing for Savannah, because had it been contained within the magazine and the magazine completely detonated, this definitely would have broken the ship in half.
The Nazis report that the warship, struck by aerial explosive, went to the bottom. But here, Navy pictures show the Savannah afloat.
In every documented case, the destructive power of the Fritz X proved so strong that it would completely rip through any battleship it hit. It would never explode while still inside the ship, but on exiting or in the water. So the debate continues. Was the bomb technically imperfect, or did Hitler's engineers design a superweapon that only failed by being too good for its time? The Fritz X mystery. Now, over 60 years later, Holger Bull embarks on a daring living history experiment, reconstructing the Nazi smart bomb and dropping it in a remote desert area. The model maker wants to test the replica's ballistics and its destructive power. This will be a first for him.
This, of course, is some kind of wonder weapon system also, you know. Really fascinates me, and it's a goal for me to get it into the air, to make it airborne.
Model maker Holger Bull seeks to unlock the mystery of the Nazi bomb Fritz X. In one of his workshops, he and his assistant Bernd start assembling the Fritz bomb. They are 2 of very few people in the world producing full-scale models of World War II technology. They first replicate the aerodynamics of the main bomb body as close as possible to the original. The original Fritz warhead carried over 300 kilograms of explosives, but the model makers soon face one big challenge.
For me, to produce the outlining, to produce the physical body of the Fritz X, the fuselage, the cross-shaped wings and all that stuff is not a big problem. But the problem is for me at the moment, the electronic, which is completely undiscovered.
Unraveling the electronics the Nazis used inside the Fritz X, Bull is searching collections in the US to find a captured original Fritz X.
Is there Pima Air Museum, Tucson, Arizona? Yes, I said Bull speaking. You are owning a Fritz X.
Model maker's luck. There is one in Arizona.
Wonderful.
It's time for the team to leave for Arizona to meet up with American model makers and aviation experts. Back in Nazi Germany, the Fritz X was not alone. Dozens of secret weapons were designed for the destructive fantasies of one man, Adolf Hitler. Hitler urged his engineers to construct a huge arsenal of unrivaled weapons that would bring final victory to Germany. When the Berlin Wall came down, Nazi files hidden for decades in the former East Germany were discovered. They revealed for the first time Adolf Hitler's plan for a disastrous strike against the continental US. Until then, no aircraft in the world could cross the Atlantic without a stopover to refuel. But Hitler wanted to revolutionize long-range aviation with a project dubbed the America Bomber.
The general plan from the Germans was to start here in northern France, to fly 4,000 miles to New York, to bomb New York, and then to fly back to France.
Hitler's high hopes rested on the Messerschmitt 264, a 4-engine bomber designed to carry a 6-ton bomb load.
It was not really a realistic plan, it was just a war game in the year 42, and the only person who was really interested to put this forward was Hitler.
The dictator became more and more obsessed with the project as 3 Messerschmitt 264 prototypes were built. In a top-secret war game from April 1942, the German Air Force targeted dozens of factories along the eastern coast of the US. By July 1944, Allied air raids had destroyed all the Messerschmitt prototypes. But unable to see his downfall, until 1945 Hitler still dreamt of suicide missions that would destroy the skyscrapers of Manhattan, leaving them in flames. Today in Tucson, Arizona, the Fritz X experiment continues. Model maker Holger Bull has arrived from Germany to meet up with reconstruction experts from the US at the Pima Air and Space Museum.
Thanks for me to be here.
Holger, John Marchand, Director of Collections here at the museum.
The Pima Museum is one of the largest aviation museums in the country. And in the World War II exhibit, it holds a rare treasure. An original Fritz X, once captured by the Canadian Army. Unfortunately, after the war, the electronics have been ripped out. Still, the exhibit provides Bull with data for his replica.
You know, having had only plans in Germany, made a couple of photographs, you know, I realized this thing will give us really the final push.
Joining Holger Bull's crew is Steve Wiper, a naval historian and himself an experienced model maker of World War II weaponry.
This is their recently restored B-36 Peacemaker. This was the largest aircraft. I mean, it is gigantic.
The US version of Hitler's America bomber. The Peacemaker was conceived in 1941 for long-range flights from the US to Germany. While there was no longer any need for such missions towards the end of the war, the American engineers won this part of the technology race against the Nazis. The maximum range surpassed that of the German rival. Work on the Fritz X continues in a special reconstruction hangar at the Pima Museum. the outer skin of the Fritz X, plywood is used, which is flexible but high in strength and capable of resisting enormous air pressure. The team has less than 2 weeks before the test drop of the bomb replica is scheduled to take place. At the same time at Chino Airport in California, to drop the expedition team's replica Fritz X, preparations are being made to use an original World War II bomber, a B-25 Mitchell. In the meantime, the model-making team is working day and night to meet the deadline. During Hitler's Third Reich, the precision bomb was one of several secret weapons programs that were technologically advanced for the time. The first Nazi superweapons were to be deployed against the French Maginot Line, a vast defensive system of concrete fortifications, tank obstacles, and artillery casemates along the border with Germany. To break through the deep fortifications, Hitler's engineers designed the largest artillery ever used in battle. The guns, named Dora and Gustav, were positioned on special railway carriers, weighing a total of 1,300 tons. About 5,000 men had to be mobilized for the field use of each gun. The railway guns could be fired at distances up to 29 miles, or 47 kilometers. And its heavier shells weighed more than 6 tons.
The artillery pieces, the Dora and Gustav, were enormous. They're meant to bring down city walls and defenses, but they're also a psychological weapon because of the random nature of when it's coming. There's very little warning. I mean, probably a few seconds before impact, you might have felt heard a rush of wind or a whistle, and then, complete annihilation. I mean, these explosions were taking out city blocks at a time.
As the Nazis had managed to circumvent the French Maginot Line, the Dora was first deployed in Russia to siege the fortifications of Sevastopol in June 1942. After about 45 rounds of the Dora gun, the city resembled a crater landscape on the moon. The success led Hitler to order still more destructive weapons. A top-secret Nazi film captured by US intelligence at the end of the war. In the US National Archives, historian Steve Weiper has discovered the key to understanding the inner workings of Adolf Hitler's precision bomb, Fritz X. The film also reveals how the German bombardiers were trained.
I believe this is a training device for the bombardier.
Yes, most probably.
The training device consisted of a bridge with a synthetic control system placed over the conveyor belt. In this synthetic training, the observer keeps the crosshairs of the bomb sight on the target by use of the control stick.
So here you see how much they were able to control the...
Yeah, it's interesting how they can actually steer it back down and almost upside down and back into the target.
Yes.
The film reveals key pieces of the bomb's control system. Shortwave receiver installed in the tail section. And in the rear, an electric gyroscope.
The roll gyro prevents the bomb from rolling so that the signals maintain their orientation.
The gyro keeps the bomb in its basic stabilized position.
Right.
It must normally fit into a kind of metal shell. There it is, yes.
The captured film confirms the unique ballistic abilities of the Fritz X.
It would actually, to some degree, overshoot the target, and then the bombardier would actually steer the bomb back down onto the target. And I found that truly fascinating.
Yeah, careful how tight you get it done.
The model crew continues to assemble the tail section of the bomb. The special box shape of the tail was critical for the unique ballistics and destructive power of the Fritz X. Just before the war, Hitler's engineers came up with this completely new design that was too fast.
And the metal tubes prevented the bomb getting supersonic speeds, which would have been basically impossible to use the proper way, because it would have probably get through a target and explode deep in the water and without making any damage.
The tubes also functioned as radio antennae for the bombardier's signal.
not so much left.
The model team paints their bomb the pale blue of the German Air Force, the color used for the original Fritz X in combat. In less than 2 weeks, the crew also finishes a second replica bomb. They now have a backup in case something goes wrong during their initial test drop, scheduled to happen in just a few days in a remote desert area. Adolf Hitler's megalomania combined with his weakness for giant weaponry. In 1942, he gave orders to construct a heavy tank codenamed the Maus. But this Maus weighed about 180 tons. On seeing the prototype, Hitler personally insisted on increasing the gun diameter. Decades later, model maker Holger Bull has discovered the blueprints for a Nazi monster tank from its original designers. He takes a road trip to a tank expert to pose the question, could these Nazi heavy tanks have turned the tide of the war? Peter Robbins holds a collection of tanks and armored vehicles from the 1970s.
And the field gun is tracked, and it weighs only 20 tons. And in the case of the German heavy tanks, what is it, 100 tons or something?
The team is heading to a site where Peter conducts exercises for the US Army. Today, they carry out a measuring experiment for the Nazi tank that would have been even more colossal than the Maus, the Land Cruiser P-1000, which Hitler himself codenamed the Rat.
I was able to purchase a couple of copies of drawings and photographs of these amazing, monstrous German tank designs. This is the tank called the Ratte, you know,
right,
which was a 1,000-ton tank.
Yeah, look at this. You can see the size of man. What a huge monstrosity.
Here, take this, Steve,
okay,
and I'll hold it and take a walk. Bye.
The team has calculated the dimensions of the Rat from the original images.
Come on back, we'll do the other side. Left.
Left.
Straight across, I'll guide you over here.
Now they mark out an outline to compare the size of the giant World War II tank to the modern tank.
To the right a little bit, Steve. That's good.
Put side by side with a modern tank, the Rat would have been colossal. Weight 1,000 tons, length 35 meters, and battleship-type guns. How devastating would such an enormous tank have been in battle?
The Ratte tank had such a large diameter projectile that its destructive force would have been absolutely enormous. Many, many feet of concrete, tremendous blast, tremendous killing power. But its mobility was so limited, you can't go down roads with it, and you can't go over bridges with it. And it might be able to go through a river, but who knows if it had enough displacement, positive buoyancy to stay on the surface and get across the river without becoming a submarine. So I think in reality it was more of a dream than everything else.
Finally, Germany's Minister of Armaments stopped the project because he deemed it ineffective at a time of disappearing resources. For Steve and Holger, the mystery remains to be solved. Did the Fritz X, or any other of Hitler's secret weapons, have the potential to change the course of war? A vast underground site, 100 meters below a hilltop, containing ammunition reserves, concrete gun shafts, and old railway tracks. A site reminiscent of a hideout created by the villains in a James Bond film. This secret Nazi gun site was constructed in 1943 in northern France on Adolf Hitler's direct orders to fire a shower of projectiles over the English Channel towards London.
Hitler was able to draw sketches, and so he was also interested in drawing plans for bunkers, for example, but also for big battleships and for very heavy guns. So he was indeed doing some work by himself with his own pencil for these special weapons.
Based on Nazi documents and Allied intelligence, this CGI shows the advanced design of Hitler's gun sight in northern France, never fully realized in wartime. The V3, V for Hitler's vengeance on London. Thin arrow-shaped projectiles were to be fired through a barrel whose projected length even surpassed Hitler's railway gun Dora. Propellant charges were to be ignited as the shell passed lateral chambers, boosting it to an incredibly high velocity, for a maximum bombing range of 100 miles, or 160 kilometers. On August 12, 1944, the US launched a counter-operation off the English coast. Joseph Kennedy Jr., JFK's older brother, was deployed to arm a bomber that was then to be remote-controlled into Hitler's cannon sight. But the mission went wrong. Before Kennedy could parachute to safety from the armed bomber, the explosives detonated. It was a tragic failure of US intelligence. Over 4 weeks before, a British bombing raid had already rendered the Nazi gun sight useless. Now, Steve Weiper and Holger Bull transport their 2 replicas of the Nazi bomb Fritz X to Chino Airport in California. They will work with a company called Aerotrader, which owns original World War II bombers and has experience test-dropping bombs from these planes. For Carl Scholl, who has been in the business of restoring World War II aircraft for over 30 years, the Fritz experiment will be a first.
Maybe 200.
200, and we're going to have to ballast it to try to get closer to the real weight. Okay, good. So this is our baby, RB-25. We've actually used this thing in several movies. We've launched the airplane from a couple of aircraft carriers over the years, and now we'll get to drop a Fritz bomb. Yeah, that'll be different too. We've never done anything like that. We've dropped torpedoes and parachutes and parachute dummies and things like that.
But not German-guided bombs.
But no German-guided bombs, so that'll definitely be a first. Okay, well, we have a torpedo rack set up in the bomb bay, but I think with our configuration with your bomb, the span on it is too large, so we'll leave the bomb bay doors off, which we've already removed.
Yes.
And then we'll have to come up with a configuration to attach the bomb to our mechanism and then come up with a suitable release mechanism, which we can do.
The Aerotrader crew has to modify the bracket for the bomb. The replica Nazi bomb is much bigger than the torpedoes they've dropped before. And they must determine how much the Fritz X should weigh and where it should be centered so that it safely leaves the aeroplane. The mechanics team tries different options and adjusts the weight of the bomb with great care. Still, pilot Carl Scholl has safety concerns.
We need the nose of this thing 100 pounds heavy, so that it definitely pitches down, because I don't want this thing going trying to decide what it's going to do, because the center of gravity is neutral. I mean, it's definitely got to be nose heavy. So you've got another 50.
Yeah, we're going to add
50 more.
That's what we're doing.
Finally, pilot Carl Scholl is satisfied with the results.
Yeah,
I'd be happy.
Right about the same.
The bomb will weigh close to 450 kilograms.
I don't want this thing going through the air like this. I want it to definitely go down. That way we can have some control over where it lands. If it flies too much, then we don't know where it's going to go.
US Navy smoke flares are attached to the bomb's rear to better monitor the flight of the Fritz X.
Okay, Carl,
but a safety test must be conducted so the flares don't place the plane in danger.
Douse it now?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, yeah.
Will the real destructiveness of Hitler's secret weapon be revealed in the drop test, scheduled in a few days? Chino Airport, California. In just 2 days' time, an experiment team will test drop a reconstructed Nazi bomb from a B-25 bomber onto a replicated battleship outline. With this experiment, the crew wants to determine the ballistics and destructive power of the Fritz X bomb. The testing site is a remote part of the Californian desert, on the property of bomber pilot Carl Scholl.
Basically, this area, which is a quarter of a mile by half a mile, will be our drop zone. And what I'd like to do is set up the profile of the Roma, something like that, and be moving west to east, and pick a point where we think we're going to hit the battleship, and that'll be our release point.
And then by having the ground teams back here kind of in a safe zone, that will help protect everybody from getting hit.
Tony Ritzman, who has flown the B-25 for over 30 years, points out the risks of the bomb drop.
Once it falls free from the airplane, we don't know if it's going to pitch up and down, if it's going to enter into a roll moment, or quite conceivably it could even pitch up and start tumbling. And so the first 2 or 3 seconds of release are going to be a little bit of a risky event as far as maybe the Fritz hitting us.
In fact, the real Fritz X was so fast that it would have reached supersonic sound. That's why they had these roundish tubes at the end of it, to prevent the supersonic sound speed,
We're in the testing phase. And if you'll remember, the Germans used up over 600 of these devices just learning how to drop them.
Yeah,
and we're going to do it.
Let's not think too much about that. Yeah, that's true.
The team schedules a preliminary test drop of one of the replica Fritz X's for the next day. The German-American team has reconstructed the Nazi bomb in a remarkably short time. With the engines of the B-25 bomber running, they now want to eliminate a disaster scenario, the replica losing parts due to the pressure of the bomber's airstream.
Stand by to drop. 3, 2, 1.
The modified release mechanism works perfectly.
Well, we didn't really test it in the airstream. All we tested was the vibration factor with the engines running, but everything looked plenty stable, so I think we're good to go.
But the Fritz X was not the only secret weapon in Hitler's arsenal. Across the ocean in Germany, a seemingly innocuous peninsula in the Baltic Sea, close to the Polish border. In Nazi Germany, the area of Peenemünde used to be Hitler's high-tech rocket center. Secret operations started in 1936, and later rocket launching sites extended to a remote island off the coast. It was here that the world's first ballistic missile took off, Hitler's vengeance weapon, the V2. In 1942, the missile became the first man-made object to reach the border of space in its trajectory. Today, special permission is needed to enter the restricted area containing the ruins of Hitler's Cape Canaveral. The legendary Peenemünde also gave birth to another advanced Nazi rocket, the Wasserfall. A single rocket was designed to bring down a whole fleet of enemy aircraft. The plan was for the warhead to detonate inside of a bomber formation, and its special liquid explosive would create a devastating blast area.
The Wasserfall was really the first potentially effective surface-to-air missile that could have been widely used and very effective against bomber fleets. It really, of all the German weapons at the time, probably could have changed the course of the war in the West, possibly even a negotiated or a termed surrender.
But Hitler regarded defensive weapons like the Wasserfall as defeatist. He didn't see the point. Instead, he promoted the vengeance and offensive weapons up until the very end of the war, still dreaming of final victory. Now, over 6 decades after the first and most fatal missions of the Fritz X, the replicas of the Nazi bomb are ready for a bold test drop in a remote desert site. In a remote part of the Californian desert in a former military testing zone, a daring World War II experiment is about to begin. The test drop of 2 replica Nazi bombs onto a battleship outline, marked as a target area in the sand. The outline is a copy of the shape of the Italian battleship Roma. The Roma and the cruiser USS Savannah were both hit in the Mediterranean in September 1943 by the radio-guided bomb Fritz X. Now, the drop experiment wants to solve the mystery. Did the Savannah survive because the Fritz bomb was technically imperfect? Or was the German bomb too powerful for its time, ripping all the way through the battleships before having time to fully detonate? To replicate the conditions of 1943, the outline in the desert must be over 250 meters long and over 30 meters wide.
Yeah, some more, please.
Naval historian Steve Wiper confirms that the target is correct.
So we're pretty close, right?
Yeah, no, you guys have a good layout. There's a couple of minor adjustments, but other than that, it looks really good.
Okay.
Yeah, tire. Go ahead and put one down.
Here?
Yeah.
The outline work on the ground is a race against time. The bomber pilots are already on their way from their Chino hangar in the B-25 for a first scouting mission. The battleship outline has to be ready so that the pilots can gather important targeting data for the bomb drop scheduled for the next day. The ground team finishes just in time. As the World War II bomber lands on the desert airfield, model maker Holger Bull arrives with the special payload of the Fritz X bomb replicas. The next day will be the moment of truth, D-Day for the Fritz X. Will the experiment be successful? Bomb model maker Holger Bull will be on board the bomber the next day, radio controlling the Fritz X. Pilot Carl Scholl is giving some last-minute advice.
Look at the trajectory, the time that it was in the air, see if our drop point is correct.
Yeah.
During their scouting mission over the target area, pilot Tony Ritzman calculated some data on the probable acceleration of the Fritz X for the test drop.
The bomb is going to travel about 2,300 feet before it impacts, and it's going to take about 12.5 seconds from the time of release until it actually impacts. And when it hits the ground, it's going to be going about 290 miles an hour.
But spotting the replicated battleship outline will be a challenge for the bomber pilots.
I was able to spot the outline of the Roma shape from a good distance, but because of the altitude we're dropping from, that disappears under the nose long before we reach the release point. So we picked a couple of landmarks way far out in the distance that will allow us to hold a constant heading and fly directly over the Roma shape.
It's the day of truth for the Fritz X experiment. Every one of the team works on their final preparations. For safety reasons, the replica's warhead is not packed with explosives.
Oh, you had it. What'd you do? Reposition it.
To better monitor the bomb's trajectory during the drop, Steve Wiper devises a special camera contraption. To protect the camera from damage, it will be pulled away from the bomb by a parachute system before impact.
So we have a trigger that's released, that catches the wind or the air slipstream, and then that will pull the drogue parachute, which will in turn pull the main parachute, which will in turn yank the entire camera module off the back of the Fritz X, hopefully just before it hits the ground.
Now the bomb and the bomber are ready for takeoff. Ready for the first test drop of their Fritz X bomb on American soil. Pilots Tony Ritzman and Carl Scholl prepare for the drop of the Nazi replica bomb Fritz X from their World War II bomber. A last radio check with Steve Wiper, who will be leading the ground team in the target area.
2 or 3 minutes to land.
Before takeoff, Tony Ritzman holds a final briefing on worst-case scenarios.
The moment of truth is about to arrive, so let's talk about what we're going to do here. We're going to climb out, do a 270-degree climbing right-hand turn, go about a mile to the west. First pass is going to be a dummy pass, just so that everybody is comfortable with the drop line, the run-in, your position.
When you're going to be dropping, so I'm going to hear that on the radio. Do you have a signal you want to give me?
Carl is going to start the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, release. At that point, it's all yours.
Yeah, I realized that.
All right, let's talk about what can happen that can go bad. If the Fritz X really starts shedding parts, you know, the tail's vibrating or something really, really unsafe, I'm going to go out here and punch it off, okay? If we do the release and it doesn't release, I'm going to come right back here and land and hope it doesn't disengage when we touch down. It'll be the smoothest landing of my life, all right? If we have an engine failure, we're going to come back and land here. Don't panic. We've done this before. We can land on one engine. Other than that, we'll come back and then we'll do number 2. Okay. Any questions?
Pilot Carl Scholl believes in a good omen for this day.
All the times that we've been doing different drops, we've never had an emergency as such. Actually, I bet $100 that we will hit the ship.
As the pilots prepare for takeoff, the ground team is heading for the battleship target outline in the desert.
When I see you in place, we'll start rolling out.
Yeah, look a little more to your left. Yeah. You see the orange? Oh yeah. The orange on, that's the stern.
The B-25 is not identical, but closely resembles the German planes that dropped the Fritz X during the war. The bombardier had to crouch in a glass compartment at the nose of the plane. Today, this will be the job of bomb model maker Holger Bull. It's his first ride in an American bomber.
Okay, Holger in the nose. We're rolling in.
I'm ready.
The Fritz X replica first seems to be stable in the air pressure. But then something goes wrong.
Well, you just lost some parts, so you got a streamer coming out the back end of the thing past the tail of the airplane right now.
Is this a disaster scenario coming true? Is the replica bomb disintegrating from the pressure of the airstream?
Wow, I see a parachute with the cameras.
All clear. The bomb body itself is still intact. It was the parachute of the camera contraption, devised to monitor the bomb, that broke loose too soon.
Okay, so you're saying the parachute released, but the black camera body is still attached.
Looks like the black camera body is still attached.
Dave, you copy that? The parachute mechanism fell off the back on the takeoff roll.
Yeah, I copy that. Apologies.
Okay, you should have the target inside, Holger. We're turning inbound now.
I will do my best to get it into the target.
When that thing drops, do not take your eyes off the Fritz X. Forget about the bomber, watch the Fritz X, because we are definitely in a danger zone here.
The countdown starting now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Release. Gone. I felt it go.
There it goes. Look at it.
Beautiful.
Look at that thing go.
Here it comes. Here it comes. Whoa. Look at that thing go. Whoa. Look at that thing go. Wow! 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 That was perfect.
Okay, this is ground crew. Fritz X dropped beautifully.
It was perfectly controlled. Went into the ground somewhere about 50 to 100 feet short of the stern. Over.
Roger, we have that. Very good.
But it turns out the first replica missed the target by 90 meters. Still, the penetration and destructive power of Hitler's smart bomb is revealed.
Wow. And it, like you said, it was cooking.
Where's the front end?
It's buried way down in here.
The bomb's incredible acceleration almost smashed it into pieces when it hit solid ground.
Look at that.
I thought it
the edge of it
when it first started.
Crushed like on a real crash of an airplane with high speed.
Where is the other one?
So this was a thing which was straight and fine. Now it's sharp like a rotten old knife, you know.
The team gathers reference data for their second and final test drop. This will be their last chance at hitting the battleship target.
There's the stern, right there.
I think we have a good idea of what happened and the glide path that it follows. So the next drop, we should be closer, if not be able to hit it.
On the second drop, Holger Bull joins the ground team to observe his replica's drop in person. In the cockpit, the pilots debate how best to readjust the release point for the Fritz X.
See, the tree line points right at it. No, it doesn't. The tree line is off to the left of it. That's the problem. Well, that's where we were. We're always to the right.
Finally, the pilots find their proper reference points for the bomb's release on the replica ship.
Well, this looks better this time. Live run. 3, 2, 1, 0, drop. It's gone.
And this time, the smoke flare ignites.
Good. Okay, B-25 is going into land.
Again, the experiment proves the destructive power of Hitler's smart bomb. Even without the benefit of explosives, over 2 meters from its total length of 3.5 meters are buried in the ground. And this time, the Fritz X came even closer to hitting the battleship outline.
Steve, how far was it?
57 yards.
So our bomber crew really did a great job. Had this been underway at, a moderate speed, like approximately 20 knots.
Dan?
I think that there's a very good chance that this bomb would have actually hit the outline.
Well, knowing that in Germany hundreds of millions of Reichsmark, and the work of dozens of engineers, scientists, and so forth have been involved, So seeing all that, then I think we did a good job,
When the bombs dropped from the aircraft, they performed exactly as the originals did, and as they came down in their arc, it was like watching a movie of the real thing, except we were there to live it ourselves, and that was just fantastic.
The replica experiment unlocked the mystery of Hitler's secret bomb, Fritz X. The bomb's specific aerodynamics, designed by German engineers in the 1940s, have been successfully recreated by the German-American team. The replica bomb's acceleration and penetration abilities were shown to have a highly destructive effect. Even without explosives, they almost completely disintegrated. Therefore, during the war, the Nazi bomb's penetration power was too strong for much of the battleship armor of the day. The USS Savannah got lucky when a Fritz X penetrated her hull. It went so deep, so quickly, that the explosion went off too late to sink the ship. But if the Fritz X had been perfected back then, could it have changed the course of the war? Towards the end, Hitler's weapons program became more and more desperate. In 1944, the dictator pushed for another last-minute weapon. The Heinkel 162, with a top speed of over 560 miles an hour, or 900 kilometers per hour, was the fastest jet at the time. But the German Air Force was running out of pilots, and some Nazi fanatics had the ingenious idea to send boys from the Hitler Youth into air combat. So they nicknamed the jet Volksjäger, the People's Fighter. A dictator's final desperation. But the jet's rush into production led to the death of many pilots due to the failures of their own machines. Awaiting the invasion in France in 1944, Hitler dreamt of crushing the landing forces with bombs like thunderbolts. But the new generation of Fritz X that could resist Allied jamming of its control signals was not yet in mass production. On June the 6th, 1944, D-Day, Allied fighters supporting the landing prevented the few German bombers left from bringing the smart bomb successfully to enemy targets. But what if the Fritz X could have been deployed on the US troops approaching Omaha Beach, fulfilling the evil fantasies of the Nazi dictator? A sinister scenario, imagining hundreds of Fritz X bombs thundering down. And countless soldiers killed even before reaching the beach. Hitler's smart bomb could have turned D-Day into doomsday for the Allies.